are listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, Tom Edwards and James Jones. And I've got no idea why I started this introduction in such energetic fashion, because I have not been so angry at the end of a West Ham United game of football for absolutely ages. 3-0 up at home within the first 35 minutes against Arsenal, cruising, feet up on the sofa, arms behind my head, happy days, drafting all my text messages, mates for just about the time I felt comfortable. And then 1, 2, 3, the most inevitable fight back in the world played out at London Stadium, meaning that we came away from the game with just a point, which some have argued before the game you would have taken. I'm not so sure, and I'm certainly not so sure after being 3-0 up. It felt very West Ham United of last season, and I don't think this week, or I certainly hope that me and the lads are going to go quite as head-to-head on that as we have the last few weeks after a little bit of a stutter in West Ham season, although James Jones is raising his eyebrow already, so I suggest that might not be the case. James, before we get into it, I like your new t-shirt, mate. I don't know, are you a Hool rep, or are you just boshing it to let us know that you have started working out?
I'm not a Hull rep. Brand ambassador is the actual term for it, I think. No, I'm joking. No, it's a free t-shirt with my first order a few months ago, so I thought I'd put it on, and I'm not being paid for this brand.
Not yet.
Brand
What
placement, but
what is it? Just milkshakes, is it? Yeah, not yet, Tom. Exactly.
Not yet. No. It's kind of like they basically brand themselves as almost like meal replacement shakes, but they're not like doesn't mean so you have 3 of them a day. They're more like they've got all like your key nutrients in. This is why they're not paying me, because I don't sell it very well.
Yeah, the worst advert ever.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's like if you're running late and you need a quick pick me up for breakfast or something, it's like it gives you all the nutrients that a full and healthy meal should give you.
Oh, there you go.
But they don't advise having 3 a day forever.
Right.
So yeah, and I'm not doing that at all. So
no, fair enough, mate. I mean, you've sold it well there. So if Huel are on the lookout for brand ambassador, I think you're the man. You could perhaps just do audio only though, couldn't you, to get round the fact?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not quite physically there yet, to be fair, but I'm working on it, boys. I'm working on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you look trim and hench, if you ask me, mate, James. So it must be just a thing. Tom, I mean, I don't know how I didn't throw to you first. If we're doing visual observations to start off the podcast, you've just shaved your barnet off again. Fed up with jokes from me at the beginning of every week saying your barnet's not on point, or just having a breakdown that we should know about?
Who knows at this point, mate? I think I was thinking about getting this mop on again, doing the edit of the YouTube last week, and I had a look at it and I thought something needs to change here. So got the missus on it, got Babs to start getting the clippers out. She's only gone in overcooked it on the top deck, so it all had to come off, and here we are, mate, looking a bit like Thomas Repka for my own liking, actually.
Yeah, peak Repka, very much so. I've seen you play though, Tom, and I know you're definitely more skillful than Super Tom. But lads, look, it's brilliant to see you both. James, so what do you want to do? The Arsenal game. I don't know. You're raising your eyebrow already. At the weekend, I was quiet after the game, both in the WhatsApp chats and on Twitter. I was seeing a few bits go back and forward. I just couldn't be bothered. I really, I've got slightly more energy for an argument or a disagreement now, if you're up for it, which it looks like you are. But I don't know. I don't know how you can be anything than disappointed after that. I don't care who you are, unless you're like the League Two opposition playing against Man City and you somehow find yourself 3-0 up, then yeah, I can justify it. But you've got 60 minutes not to concede a goal, and we've been defensively resolute all season, and we just completely bottled it. You could tell after the first one, just heads had gone, and you could just tell it was the most. What's the word? I can't even get my words out. I didn't think I was that angry about this anymore. In shock, I come on the We Are West Ham podcast and it all comes out again. But you could just see it coming. It was the most predictable certainty the world has ever seen. And it sounds like, or it looks like, you're about to pretend you're not that fussed about it.
I mean, just to your first point, I am up for it, to be fair. I've had my heel today, so I'm definitely up for it.
Come on.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm just equally as disappointed. But it hasn't angered me like in a way that it's definitely angered you. I've been reading over your show notes just a minute ago, and blimey, I mean, incredibly angry still. I tweeted after the game. I was like, do you know what? I probably would have taken a point at the beginning of the day. But then a game like that happens when you're 3-0 up after what was it, 32 minutes? And then you bottle it and you end up just only taking a point from it and almost going a little bit Spursy. And so. Yeah, it does feel like a defeat, but yeah, we did bottle it. But the way I see it is that it's
Are you doing this on purpose just because I'm angry about it?
No, I'm not. I'm finding it hard to really just feel angry about it. It's frustrating. It's annoying. But it hasn't angered me.
It's not the same words,
like,
isn't it?
It's not like this has happened every week, like we've been used to. Almost every single week, something happens on the pitch which just baffles us, and we're like, why can't we just be like a normal football club? That is an isolated incident this season. It hasn't happened this season at all. We've normally been very good. And I put it down to purely squad depth. Like, we didn't have the players to come off the bench to really change the game. Like, David Moyes should have been solidifying that left-hand side where or our left-hand side and Arsenal's right, where Chambers was, I think as Jamie Carragher put it was playing like Cafu.
Oh, he brought Mark Noble on, no, James?
Yeah, but he's not playing out that left, is he? He's in the middle of the pitch. And then he brings Fredericks on and sticks him out on the right and doubles up on our right-hand side rather than our left, which is a bit baffling. But I think all in all, I would have taken a point. And yeah, it does feel like a defeat and it feels disappointing, and we should have seen the game out. It was coming. The moment they got that first goal before the end of the first half, you just knew in the second half they'd find a way back. And I haven't used this as an excuse. I avoided using this as a main excuse on Twitter when I tweeted after the game. But Christ almighty, John Moss has got something to answer for with some of those decisions. That one when we were through on goal, what's going on there?
Yeah, that was poor.
And not so much John Moss, but VAR as well. I mean, they checked to make sure that the ball wasn't moving for Lingard playing that free kick quickly for Bowen's goal. Didn't check for Arsenal's second. And if you look at the replay, the ball was moving when he kicked the ball. But even with those little things, we shouldn't be throwing away a 3-goal lead. And then we get unlucky with Antonio hitting the post from 2 inches out, which again is just another frustration. But on any other day this season, we win that game. It's just for me, the way I see it is it's just one of those games where it didn't go for us. It only went for us for 30 minutes and it all fell apart. But it hasn't. It's not going to underline our season. It's not going to underpin all the good and great work David Moyes players has done up to this point.
You said that last week. I disagree. Look, we'll go into it in more detail in a bit later on in the show. But we did say that last week, that we can't keep on saying it's not going to define our season, because if anything, it's these games, this little run of games that we've got now left is going to define our season, actually, against the teams that are around us or threatening to be around us. Tom, just briefly, because we've got a section parked for this later on, what are your just sort of summary introductory feelings before we go into it in more detail in a bit?
Yeah, I'm leaning more towards the frustration with you, Will, on this one. I thought we had a game not sewn up, but a team, when you're 3-0 up against a team who was so out of confidence by the looks of it and getting so physically overrun, to then give them a way back the way we did was very poor. And I don't disagree about the squad depth. That didn't help us at all. But again, I thought a couple of the changes could have been a little bit different. And yet again, I felt like we reverted to a bit too negative. Not saying go all out like we discussed last week, but maybe saying play with the balls that we did in the first 30 minutes to make the difference in the final third. So frustration, and I'm probably with you, sadly, this week, Will, mainly.
Yeah, well, I'm pleased to hear it, mate. And in a way, you know, I am pleased to have a bit of backup, of course, but it's one of those where you don't really enjoy being right. And I think it'll be interesting as we go into it in a bit more detail in a bit. I think our views last week about, I thought, you know, pragmatism was a fairly sensible approach at Man United, and you two wanted to go for it more. I think the flip side is true after 35 minutes at the weekend when we were 3-0 up and it seemed like Arsenal were coming onto us a bit. I think the owner should have been asked to go and kill the game. But look, we'll go into that in a bit more detail. James, I'm going to do the housekeeping. It's going to be a little bit different this week. We've got a particularly special message that came in during the week that I don't know if you could get up and you'll be able to read out shortly. But like I say, just to let everyone know what's coming up on the show tonight, we'll do the housekeeping shortly, then we'll have some Arsenal reaction in more detail from me and the boys. I'm delighted to say after last week, Tom giving him grief on Twitter, his comments being the root of a discussion between me and the lads, we have confirmed that Jacob Steinberg, football journalist and West Ham fan from the newspaper, is joining us to talk about that Arsenal game. Said Benrahma, David Moyes, and his view on some of the fans' reaction to our recent games. The Betway charity bets, will go over those as if that day on the weekend wasn't bad enough. We were so close to winning some more money. We'll go into that in part 3. No opposition view this week because, of course, it's the international break. We'll do a quick roundup of which West Ham players are playing where. James is the quizmaster for Name That Game in part 5 as things are hotting up at the top of that league. We'll wrap up with Sandra Brobby from The Sun for the West Ham women. So a huge announcement about the WSL in the week, signing a massive broadcast deal that has the real potential to completely change the sport in this country, which is absolutely fantastic news. And West Ham women had as much of a disappointing result, probably more so than the men did at the weekend when they played Birmingham last Wednesday. It was an absolutely phenomenal game, and all credit to the girls. The performance was so much better, but absolutely heartbreaking to see Birmingham score a 94th minute equaliser after the girls had battled back from 1-0 down to go 2-1 up. Looked like the first WSL win under Ollie Harder, but it wasn't to be. So Sandra will join us for that, and then we'll say goodbye as we always do and have a brief Fantasy Premier League update. So, like I said, first things first, it's housekeeping this week, a little bit different. As always, follow us on Twitter at @WeAre_West Ham. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link to that is in the description to this podcast. You can watch all of these videos. You can watch the whole show if you want, or just the exclusive interviews that we often have with several different West Ham related guests. The link is down below. You can email us at wearewesthampod@gmail.com with whatever you fancy getting in touch about. Just give us your thoughts on the game. If you like or don't like something that me and the boys have said, feel free to get in touch. And Jonesy, we have got Instagram as well. We don't use it as much as our other platforms, it's fair to say. But Rob got in touch this week, didn't he? And to be honest, it put a smile on all of our faces, didn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a lovely message to receive from Rob. He says, you always ask for feedback, and I just wanted to say how much that I enjoy your podcast. I did a review last year on the Wilkes Hammer, which I think we read out at the time.
Yeah.
The different segments work really well for me, particularly the opposition view and the women's team update. I also like the guests. Today's finance section was excellent. And for me, as a 61-year-old, it's brilliant to hear people like Patsy Holland, some top guests, and getting insights from people like Tony Carr every now and again is brilliant. The three of you combine well, and although I'll be the same age as your parents, it feels like I'm listening to mates talking about the Hammers. I appreciate how much hard work must go into what you do, so I thought the least I could do was to provide feedback on how much I enjoy it. I've listened to several Hammers podcasts, but for me, this is a different level for the above-mentioned reasons. Keep the great work going, and even Will's terrible attempt at the Champions League tune made me laugh last week.
Well, I mean, James, when you put that in the group, to be quite honest, I was having a bit of a bad day the other day. A few things had gone wrong. I was just in a bad mood. Lockdown was getting on my nerves, as I know it is to loads of people at the moment. And when you put that in the group chat, that really put a smile on my face. So look, massive thanks to Rob for that, because, you know, nice words like that do cheer us up, don't they? We do work hard. We enjoyed doing this pod as well, but yeah, great stuff from Rob, so thanks very much for that. That did brighten our mood. But that brings me on to our latest announcement at the We Are West Ham podcast. It's been a full year now since the first lockdown hit, and unfortunately, as a result, Love Sport Radio, where James and I, and occasionally Tom, would broadcast the West Ham show live to the nation every Tuesday night. They had to come off the airwaves, and our show sadly had to stop with it at the time. But at the time, James and I decided to take on the extra work ourselves, rebrand as We Are West Ham, and keep the show going as a podcast rather than the radio station throughout lockdown, just so you guys still had something to tune into every week while the world looks set to be a bit grim and boring for a while. And just like everyone else, we had no idea when it was or how long it was all going to last, when it was going to end. And to be honest, Jonesy, we were pretty hopeful, weren't we, that we'd be back in the studio within a matter of weeks at the time. But it wasn't to be. Here we are now, 12 months later, still recording from our offices, bedrooms, from our homes. But in the last year, like Rob's there, we've had a lot of wonderful messages from you guys. To be honest, one of my favourite parts about doing this podcast is knowing that fellow West Ham fans like us all around the world are going about their day, whatever it is, work, train, in the car, laughing, smiling, or getting angry in some instances, I'm sure, about something that one of us or our guests has said. One thing we've noticed, though, is that a lot of you who've got in touch to say thanks or just let us know how much you enjoy the pod have said you'd like to buy us a pint. So to mark a year since we went podcast only and rebranded as We Are West Ham, set up an account at buymeacoffee.com/We Are West Ham. And that's exactly what you can do. Now, if you fancy it, you can buy us a pint. It's set at a £5 by the website. So it's London Stadium or the Cow in Westfield pint prices, to be quite honest. But if you head over there, you can buy us a pint each, more than a pint each, or 1 pint between the three of us, if you'd like, which, to be honest, and Tom can vouch for me here, is what James would regularly do when the pubs were open. It was his round before or after a live radio show. 1 pint and 3 straws was Jonesy. But in any case, if you're worried about where the money might go, I can guarantee it will either be spent behind a bar initially at the end of season beers, which are coming up, or it'll be spent on things to make We Are West Ham better for you guys. So that could be guest fees to ensure we continue to get big and relevant West Ham names on the show, equipment and software to improve and maintain sound and edit quality. Me and the lads have all got mics and editing software and all that, which we've paid for ourselves up until now, or of course quality exciting listener giveaways. We've already given away 3 or 4 replica shirts this season, as well as a bunch of other West Ham prizes, and we want to continue doing that from now on and perhaps ramp it up a little bit more. So we are planning on organising something where any of our listeners who'd like to can come along, have a beer, a laugh and a chat about West Ham with the 3 of us in person once lockdown rules allow it again, because we'd love to meet all you guys. We often talk about that. So we'll definitely organise something where we can all have a beer together. But like I say, I'd just like to say, whether you do or don't do this will have no effect on the podcast that goes live every week, other than a small addition to the weekly housekeeping section that none of you listen to anyway. You'll get just as much podcast as you do now. Nothing will change, and there's absolutely no drama at all if it's not your thing. It's not a monthly subscription, anything like that. You're not going to miss out if you don't do it, nor will you get anything extra if you do. You do it as often as you like, just once or never, and it just gives you guys a way to chip in a few quid if you'd like, as some of you have asked about it in the past. So if you'd like to buy us a beer or just support the podcast, head on over to buymeacoffee.com/We Are West Ham, when you can just do that. And the link is also included in the description to this podcast. Worth noting, I think, James, as well, that, we said that it's not a subscription or anything like that, but absolutely no problem with other podcasters, West Ham or football in general, that do. I pay for a few podcasts that are also available for free. The 3 of us, as most football content creators do, we do this alongside our jobs, don't we? So no pressure on anyone whatsoever. It's just something we thought we'd do, as quite a few people have asked about it, eh?
Yeah, it's I mean, as you said, no issues with anyone else in our space that charges, but it's just, as you said, we've had a lot of people express their their willingness or their want to, or find out how they could go about buying us a beer or donating to the podcast. And this is a good way for us to do it. And as you quite rightly said, when Boris lets us, which we're hoping is going to be next month at the earliest, or the latest, shall I say, we should be able to meet up and have a few beers and invite some of our listeners along, finally meet people in person and put the last year behind us and move on. But this is a really, really good way for anyone that does fancy of buying us a pint in advance. It'd be really, really good.
Exactly. And it'll get you out of finding excuses not to put into the whip, won't it, at the end of the season, which will be an absolute result. But Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Well, look, I think that covers it. That's probably the longest housekeeping we've ever done, isn't it? So I think, the majority of people will have no doubt turned off because just me getting people to follow us on Twitter. Oh no, I haven't asked people to leave us a review, but perhaps that's too much this week, Jonesy. What do you reckon?
Yeah, pint or a review, either or. Like,
All
you
right,
can't be
yeah,
asking
fair
for.
enough.
We're asking too much.
5 stars and and some nice words or a pint of Estrella. You still on Carling, are you, Tom, these days?
I've gone up
With
in
that
the world.
haircut, he is.
Oh yeah, exactly. With this, I'll take wherever I'm on Tiskies with this, actually, mate.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, look, like I say, if you're one of those who's expressed the desire to do that, you can now do that now. buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham. If not, do not worry, and it will just be a brief mention of it in the housekeeping each week, which you can continue to ignore if you want to. So, lads, back to the Arsenal game. Tom, I think I'll go to you first because I'm not really in the mood for James's pragmatism this week. Last week, I'll put it this way. Last week, you were arguing that West Ham should have gone for it at Old Trafford, right? So as soon as we were 3-0 up, and I know it might seem counterintuitive, Arsenal got that 1 goal back. We managed to scrape into half-time. The first one, I don't think you can argue with. It's a great turn and finish by Lacazette. I know it comes off of Souček and ricochets in, but it was good footwork. I thought Lacazette was outstanding the whole game. And I thought after half time, I thought that was the time, given that it plays into our strengths, i.e. we're good at going forward and scoring goals this season, the best thing to do would have been to go out and attack them. I know they were going to come at us, but go out and attack. And all of a sudden you've got a 3-goal lead again. And it puts them on the back foot and just worries them a little bit. But we didn't do any of that. I know Antonio hit the post, but other than that, we didn't scare them at all, did we, in that second half?
No, I absolutely agree with you, mate. I really do. I thought it wasn't as if we weren't creating anything and we're going to dead ends and we were losing the ball in bad areas. More often than not, when we got out, we were creating stuff or in around good positions, or we had 3-on-3s and we just didn't quite make the most of it. We looked dangerous and we clearly couldn't deal with Lacazette all game, dropping into that pocket between Rice and Souček, and they were going to get chances for the whole game. The way it panned out, you could just tell that it was going to be gazumping us and us just trying to withstand something. And I felt like the only thing to do was to go out and hit them. And that Antonio one, I know it looks bad. He maybe could have started the run a bit earlier. He looks to go a bit late to the back post, but other than that, he's done everything right. And that was just one of those interesting things. But I personally feel like if we got at them, and we could have done that numerous times. I thought Bowen and Benrahma 1v1 against their fullbacks had no problem going by them and putting the ball in the box. And yeah, it was a shame. It was a shame that we reverted back and just sort of lost that courage to play. I think Lingard came out in the interview after, and something I tweeted and always say is courage to get on a ball and make things happen and be brave to take that forward pass, make that chance, or just delay it for a second and not pump a rush of blood and just hook it out to touch, actually get on a ball again. And hopefully they'll learn from this and we won't see it happen again, because it was a bit of a stinger, that one.
Yeah, I think, like you say, with that Antonio one, that is a one-off thing. You could say, oh, Benrahma's hit it a bit hard, Antonio goes a bit late, whatever. But like you say, that is inches here or there, isn't it, really? I did actually make some notes during the game, James, which I haven't done for a very long time. I felt very professional doing it, but I just put Rice and Souček non-existent in the second half. Tom's mentioned it there. I thought Odegaard and Lacazette dropping in, just that was where the game was won, really dominated that space. I know Chambers from the right hand side did well, but all those moves started from that space where Rice and Souček was supposed to be playing. That frustrated me because I think you've got 2 holding midfielders there. We should be dominating that area of the pitch against anyone. I did Chambers, Lacazette and Odegaard, I thought were outstanding for Arsenal in that second half. The down the left, Cresswell and Benrahma. And I did put, and I'll bring it up then, you've said these won't define our season. I think you're wrong, because I think that felt like the difference between a European place and not, because you just invite, like we invited Arsenal on, you've also invited all those teams around us. They've nicked a few points on us, and that's so tight there. It's very, very feasible that we could finish 8th now. And before David Sage gets on me about projected negativity, I'm being negative about the game that we've just seen play out.
I mean, I see your point, and maybe it does define our season. I think we can't we look at the end of the season and go, okay, well, you know, we've already said that the Newcastle game at the beginning of the season is just an absolute stinker now, because, you know, they're the only team outside the top six that's actually beaten us this season. And look at the season they've had since. Like, we shouldn't have lost that game. I think Odegaard was probably the best player we've come up against this season. So I thought he was just outrageously good in midfield, and we just didn't know how to deal with him. He pulled the strings. I think you're a bit harsh on Souček and Rice being non-existent. I think, yeah, okay, it wasn't their worst game, but, you know, they both had good moments. Declan Rice turned into Lionel Messi for 30 seconds, which was fun to watch.
Should have turned though, shouldn't he? Silly shooting there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah. Or he should have played it off to Antonio earlier. But yeah, I don't think the second half performance was half expected. I think we all kind of expected us to come out, and we all wanted us to go out and try and nick a fourth, kill the game. But deep down, we all expected us to go out there. We've seen West Ham do it so many times, particularly at home this season, and try and protect the lead. We very rarely have gone at teams when we've already been leading. And so that's kind of what we were expecting, and that's what we got. And when you come up against players like Odegaard, who can pull the strings in midfield, and Chambers like a man possessed on the right-hand side, and Lacazette doing a great job in dropping in, we found it very difficult, and Creswell got exposed on more than one occasion. Dawson can't stop scoring, just the wrong net now. So yeah, for me it was less anger and just more frustration that we could all see it coming. And once again, everyone but David Moyes and the players can see it coming. It's happened on more than one occasion this season. Luckily, we didn't lose the game, because I think if there's another 5 minutes on the end of that, we would have lost it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and the first half as well. So, Tom, I've written down here, and there's been a lot of, it seems to be the flavour of the week on West Ham Twitter this week, about people being polarised. I mean, like we've said it before, people are polarised about everything in society at the moment, aren't they? Which is, you know, relentlessly boring and frustrating. However, this week's flavour of the week on West Ham Twitter seems to be the Said Benrahma conversation. We've had differences of opinion on it before. We both agreed that he should have started ahead of Noble at the weekend. I'll just put down here, Benrahma ? Noble ? I didn't think Benrahma did anything to particularly argue his case that, definitely we have to start him again next week. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And bringing Noble on again, I mean, it's getting to the stage now, isn't it, where I think a lot of people just don't want to see him on the pitch in the Premier League, and maybe that is a squad depth issue, but I don't know I never understand really what the purpose is. What do you think the thinking was behind bringing Noble on?
Yeah, I think it was to try and plug the gap between Lacazette and Odegaard getting in that hole, like we all mentioned. But Noble was playing too high. When he came on, I was shocked. He played him. The thinking was to play him there. He played him at the 10. He played him ahead of Rice and Souček, when he should have played him inverted and played him behind then and let them get their legs and try and nick a winner. So he didn't actually, tactically, it was just a bit of a disaster class. You put someone on who can't chase balls, who can't cover lateral ground very easily anymore, and he just ends up getting caught high up the pitch on numerous occasions. I don't know how many gifs there are and memes about him just getting driven by Partey and David Luiz and just one touch and he's away. And I think the only time he's come on and really made any sort of impact this season has been when he's been at the bottom of that three and had to run less and just sort of done the dirty work for those two. And to play him ahead of him is just being kamikaze at times. And I think if we use him again, I do think he's good enough on the ball. I do think he's still got that experience to just about do it in the Prem, but only when he's got the protection of those two in front of him and he's playing that bit deeper. And on Said, do you want to talk on that?
Yeah, no, you can go, mate. Yeah, I just still love that you're on first name terms with him, because you're determined for that Benrahma 9 shirt that you've got, that you paid 75 quid for, to be worth some money at the end of the season.
Mate, it's coming. I'm telling you, please, Said, please. I need to sell it on eBay soon.
But what do you think? What did you honestly think?
I thought he showed flashes. Agreed. I think, defensively he was part of the problem for Chambers and co getting in on that side. no doubt. And I think he's been all right defensively all year. I think that's been one of the things which has surprised people, how hard he has worked. I think the weekend maybe he didn't show that as much. I think going forward, his link-up play with Lingard in the first 20, 30 minutes again was positive and does give us an extra dimension going forward. And we can keep the ball in the final third a bit better with both of them on the pitch and create different angles and maybe get a few more balls in the box and get Souček higher because he takes it to the byline. So I think he offers us something. I think if he flashes that across and Antonio scores, everyone will be waxing lyrical about a moment of genius from him to win West Ham a key game, which puts them in Champions League place. And I think it would be an entirely different conversation. And I do have a problem with people going at him. I mean, it's his first year in the Premier League. He's done all right. He's been in and out the side. He started 13, been off the bench 11. He's only started 4 in a row is the most he's ever started. I think I just had a look at it. He's barely got given a real fair crack at it yet, and there's more to come from him. And getting on his back is just, come on, we're fifth in the Premier League, and he's contributed to that.
Yeah. Well, a man who has got a different view to you on Said Benrahma, Tom, perhaps a little bit more in line with my own one. He got absolutely pelters for on Twitter is Jacob Steinberg from The Guardian. He's not a man who shirks on his views on West Ham or football or anything, which is what you want, and it's why he's a top level outstanding journalist. James, go on before we move on. You've got one more thing to say by the looks of it.
Yeah, no,
I seamless, flawless link there.
Sorry, mate. Sorry. The last 2 games, I think, and I forgot to mention it earlier, we've really seen how much we miss Fornals in that midfield. Just his work rate and the legs he has on him throughout the game, and obviously David Moyes likes that bit of work rate in midfield, and I think we noticed it
against
more
the big teams, isn't it?
We noticed it more against Arsenal. Not many people have mentioned it or spoken about him. And he's kind of been almost a Hayden Mullins of the season, where he kind of just slips under the radar a little bit. But he's relatively effective. We miss him when he's not there, and I think we're beginning to see that we miss Fornals. He just offers that little bit more energy and just doesn't stop working in midfield. I think that was partly our downfall on the weekend.
I agree, particularly against a good team. You do argue whether or not he'd have let Chambers go on that run where he scored from. But, it's 3-0. It's a point against Arsenal. We would have taken it before James, but I am still of the opinion that a professional Premier League football team, when you're 3-0 up against anyone with 45 minutes to go or whatever, should definitely be professional enough to see that out for the win. But hey, we didn't. We're still in with a fight at Europe, I think, and I can't wait till after next week if we get a negative result, James Jones, to tell me once again that it's not defining our season. But Jacob Steinberg from The Guardian coming up next. So you are still listening to the We Are West Ham podcast with me, Will Pugh, Tom Edwards, and James Jones. More conversation about Said Benrahma this week and his contribution against us last week. I'm delighted to say that Jacob Steinberg, football journalist and West Ham fan for his sins from The Guardian, is joining us again on the We Are West Ham podcast. Jacob, it's brilliant to have you with us. Thanks so much for taking time out of your day to come on the podcast once again. Your conversation, your tweets last week caused quite the debate between Tom and I. I was 100% team Steinberg, while Tom was on the other end. As far as Said Benrahma goes, you tweeted out among a thread, one thing that really hit home with me was that Said Benrahma and a lot of people have a view on Benrahma that is different to his actual on-field play suggests. What is has that changed at all, or can you give us a bit more detail about that at first and your stance on him?
Well, I think that it was a little bit obvious to me back in October that Said Benrahma wasn't David Moyes' top choice. I think if he'd had the time back, he may well have gone for Josh King at Bournemouth, and maybe also looking with the benefit of hindsight, given what Josh King has gone on to do, not really done anything for Bournemouth before he left and went to Everton. Maybe that's a signing that might not have worked out. Equally, it could be that's something that just didn't suit him. And if he joined West Ham in October, that he may well have made a huge difference. And when Antonio got injured, he may well have been a player who really would have made more of a difference up front than Sebastian Haller did. And you know, indeed, if we'd had someone like that, perhaps it would have been an even stronger position that we're looking at now. They might be sort of clear of Chelsea. So I'm not sure for a start whether Benrahma was somebody who quite fitted into what Moyes wanted to do. That isn't to say that I didn't think that he was himself, taken in isolation, a good player. He clearly had done very well in the Championship with Brentford. There were other clubs who did have a look at him. You know, the Palace had a look. Villa had a bit of a look as well. I think where I come from it though is that £30 million for Said Benrahma I thought was really quite a big fee for somebody who, you know, really not proven at all in the Premier League, or absolutely no experience. West Ham didn't have a huge budget to play with last summer, so I thought that I raised my eyebrows a little bit at that. And I was, you know, kind of some people would say to me, yeah, you know, he's a very talented player, get him going and he'll make a big difference. There were others who were saying he won't make that much of a difference to the first team. And I think that from what we've seen so far, there'll be people obviously who'll argue, well, this is simply because Moyes hasn't really sort of let him off the leash. But I think I fall into the latter camp, which is that I don't think that he is he's someone who's made West Ham better. I don't think he's been a disaster by any means. I think he's had some good games here and there, but there are other times when you feel that he really sort of struggles with the physicality, the pace of the Premier League. I don't think necessarily he has the pace sometimes to get away from players' strength. You know, like that infamous game against Palace where he gave the ball away 44 times or something. I thought, you know, that night that sort of came after you know, a good performance against Leeds, where, you know, people thought perhaps he'll push it on, but he didn't really that evening. I think with Moyes, it's been a case of him really trying to get this guy up to speed in the Premier League. Then you come to January, and you know, obviously how it goes. They don't sign a striker, but they do sign a player in Jesse Lingard, who proven in the Premier League, an international player with England. You know, semi-finals of the World Cup and everything. Scored in cup finals for Manchester United. And he's someone who really, you can see the difference when he's playing in Benrahma's position. You know, the levels of a player who's pushing, you know, when you're pushing for Champions League, Europa League, there is a big difference there. I don't think that you know, Lingard can kind of get away with not tracking back as much when he's producing the output in the final third that we've seen from him so far. It's harder to justify with Benrahma. We saw it on Sunday, where obviously Arsenal overloaded West Ham's left side. It was an issue with the goals that Benrahma wasn't doing the work. And I thought that was why against Manchester United, when Moyes got a lot of, I thought, quite knee-jerk criticism out of that game, where obviously it was very negative. I ended up paying more attention to the episode of Sopranos that I was watching than the game itself because it's so dull. But I thought it was very conditioned
this is the menu game,
yeah, last week, where you know, where there was a lot of expectation around what West Ham would do going into that game. Obviously, they then proceeded to do very little in an attacking sense, but I thought that's very conditioned by the loss of Pablo Fornals to injury, which I think has really hurt West Ham in both of those games against United and Arsenal, because they're somebody who really does work off the ball. He might not be as flashy, he might not be you know, as exciting necessarily as Benrahma, but when it comes to, you know, what we all know with Moyes is that if you don't run, you don't play, which is something that all the players say about him. Fornals is somebody who very much after a sticky start really does do that, helps the team. I think he's been a big part of how they've been defensively solid this season. With Benrahma in the side, I think it's different. You know, it's not to say that I'm part of this sort of, I have a massive vendetta against him. I just think I can see why Moyes in that game against United would be thinking, I don't know if I can trust him in this level of game, where we don't have, especially where they didn't have Lingard as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're literally the bit we've just come in, and we all said the same thing. James made a good point saying that Lingard, sorry, Fornals, we certainly miss him, particularly against those big teams. It was you tweeted there's that's it. Moyes doesn't trust Benrahma, who did nothing after coming on with a lot of time left. I know we're skipping back to the United game. There's a view of Said Benrahma that doesn't tally with reality. Tom, me and you have spoken about this at length on the podcast this season, and it's fair to say that. You are, in my opinion, and perhaps one of the people who Jacob's tweet might have been inadvertently aimed at, then, that I feel like sometimes your view of Benrahma doesn't tally with reality. What Jacob said there about Jesse Lingard and all of that, listening to it, for me, sounds quite hard to argue with. Have you got, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they play different positions. Lingard, Benrahma's had that role once in the 10 dog against Leeds, and I'd say that's arguably our best attacking performance creatively since before Lingard came in. That is, obviously since then we've played some stellar games, and Lingard is a level above, absolutely. But Benrahma plays out wide, so they're slightly different anyway. Their contribution to the team is a bit different. I think you're looking for different roles from them anyway. They can both play at the same time. I don't think it's one or the other. And then the other one is Benrahma's stats with him. I know you mentioned there you think we're less solid, or is that, whatever that is, an eye test or anything. The stats suggest that we've won 10 out of the 12 games he started, or 10 out of 13 on the weekend, and we've only lost one and we've drawn the other. So our results with him as in the starting 11 have been significantly better than without. And I think he's got there's a reason why he's started so slow. He's been in and out the side. He hasn't had a crack at it. Like I said earlier on a previous section, I think it's 4 starts in a row is his most amount of game time. And I'm not one of those who sat here saying he's going to score 10, 15, 20 goals, but I definitely think he had something. And I definitely think we've shown this season we're a better creative force when he's on the pitch, and he's got a lot more to do. He's got a lot more to offer, but I do think that the slander against him, which is coming from certain sections of fans or media or whatever, is probably over the top, because just go back a year ago and what he was doing in the Championship, there's a serious player in there, and he's shown elements of it at us. So to give up on him after 8 months when he's also contributed so heavily to a team who's come 5th, be that from his position on the squad coming off, he's won us key games with things he's done off the bench, the Villa, Fulham, 2 match-winning assists from moments of quality from him. So he's definitely added to it. And I think the slander against him or the dismissive nature against him that he's not a Premier League player is definitely too early. We've seen that time and time again, that you can't write a player off after 7-8 months. And I'm not saying...
Well, I think he's... Sorry, I mean, I think he's a Premier League player. I think he's easily good enough to play in the Premier League. Mm-hmm. Where I think there's an issue with him is, I mean, just to touch on the assist, a couple of the assists you mentioned. I mean, I'd argue that the Fulham one was relatively simple, and I thought the Villa one was a little bit lucky and made by a very good piece of improvisation from Bowen. What I will give him is a one that you didn't mention, which was the very good pass to Souček against Villa away, which is what I would like to see from him all the time. I'm less interested in the skill, which is what I'm not sure what this team is really about. I'm more just about the quick incisiveness in the final third, and I think that's probably what Moyes is looking for. I think he's a Premier League player. I think what the issue is he a £30 million player that West Ham needed when they, obviously it's that old question about recruitment, isn't it? Where they'd spent the entire summer chasing centre back after centre back, and then come the end of it, suddenly out of nowhere, Dawson comes in on loan, and okay, he has turned out to be, a great signing, which a lot of fans didn't think would be the case.
Us included, for sure.
Yeah. I think people were very dubious about that. And 30 million on Benrahma, which obviously at the same time he was coming in to replace Grady Diangana. So there's an element of the finances that you question. Grady going for 18, and again there was a huge reaction about him going at the time, which again maybe feels a little bit over the top.
Silly now.
He's not really done anything, but also at the same time, then to go and spend all that money on Benrahma, I question how much better he is than Grady. Exactly how much that's really affected the squad. And when we come to the sort of final half hour against Arsenal, and we come to the United game, could that money have been reinvested in a better way, in strengthening key positions that really have ended up hurting them? I'm not so sure how much Benrahma has contributed to them being fifth. Again, not saying that he's done nothing, but I think the best team probably doesn't include him in it. I think it's the best attack is probably four now, Lingard, Bowen, and behind Antonio, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Bowen can be disposed of points.
Sorry.
So I was just going to say, I think we've got all three. I think that's a luxury. I don't think certain games, certain courses for certain horses. I think we've got four very different players up there who each bring something unique. So I think it is horses for courses, but I can't argue with that as a front three. No.
I mean, I think one of the I just think one of the issues that you get with the West Ham sort of need to move away from is this idea around the kind of luxury indulgent player that we all kind of love. We all watched. I don't know if we're all of a certain age, then we all would have sort of grown up watching Di Canio, Berkovic, all those kind of players, and they were all great and everything. Di Canio was also a player who never turned up for away games and sort of walked out on the team when they were going down. Similarly, there's the whole thing around 2016. Everybody loved Payet, and it was fantastic, but it was all kind of built on a house of sand.
Yeah, Yossi Benayoun was a good one.
We're trying to get away. Yeah. But I thought Benayoun worked a bit harder than maybe the two players I've mentioned. But I think with Moyes, it's trying to get away from that a little bit, and not focusing on just somebody who can do something out of nothing. It's it's focusing on a team where everybody's kind of working and being effective, which I think he felt. I remember talking to him last year and asking him, when you managed against West Ham for Everton, did you think they were a bit of a soft touch? And he said, yeah.
I mean, that's you mentioned Moyes there. You've done my linking for me, which I appreciate. But you similar stance from you last week, and I think something you tweeted out after the game. There was after United game. This is that you find the abuse that Moyes gets. Correct me if I'm paraphrasing here, but pathetic, I think was the word you used. And I think last week I was of the opinion that a pragmatic approach at Old Trafford was perfectly sensible. Yes, it brought up a turgid game of football, but we lost by the odd own goal at a team who are likely to finish second in the league. So I don't think there was too much shame in that. My stance shifted somewhat at the Arsenal game, and I think Moyes deserves probably more criticism for that, in my opinion, given that after you're 3-0 up, to not be able to hold on to that, albeit against a team who had some talented players like Arsenal, Odegaard, Lacazette, and Chambers obviously played well, but I think to just sort of invite them on was sort of criminal, really. But what's your stance on as far as the Moyes stuff goes? Because West Ham Twitter, you'll know as much, probably more than some of us. I'm trying to think of an appropriate adjective. What a emotive place it can be at times, particularly around David Moyes. And you got a bit of kickback about the abuse that Moyes was getting, or the criticism he was getting after United. Tom Edwards was one of those. What's your stance on David Moyes, and particularly the grief that he gets and doesn't get after certain games this season?
Well, I suppose in the to declare an interest would be that I didn't see Sunday's game, so I can't comment on exactly what happened in a tactical sense, because I was at Chelsea v Sheffield United and
fair enough,
was walking around Fulham Broadway Sainsbury's listening to the game on the radio, waiting for Arsenal to equalise. Why? After the Chelsea game. So the only thing I'd say about the Arsenal game is that I'm looking at West Ham's bench and thinking, well, I don't see a lot there, which is an issue that isn't really created by David Moyes. I think it's a long list of reasons for that.
It is if the club are to be believed, Jacob, isn't it? There was David Moyes' decision not to spend any more money in the summer, and it was very much these are David's decisions.
Right. I think that one of the things that we've got to again look at is that I think David Moyes has quite a good understanding of. I think at times he has almost a better understanding of West Ham as an outsider than at times people looking from the inside do. In that he's talking all the time about you need to maybe calm down and not get ahead of yourselves and sort of there's been times in the past. I think the classic one would be 2016, where they go close to qualifying for the Champions League. But if we're honest, like how lucky was that season under Slaven Bilic? It was fairly lucky. They go into the next season, they don't spend it. Well, they don't into the London Stadium, don't really buy anybody who's any use
Zero
at all,
investment,
and and it all falls apart basically. That's what he's trying to avoid. It's about trying to lay foundations in there, and if players. Okay, if he's got money to spend, but the players aren't there in a particularly dead pandemic hit market, then do West Ham need more players who are going to sit around on big contracts, which is the issue for them last summer when it's a real struggle to shift people like Yarmolenko, Lanzini,
Halle and Anderson,
Felipe Anderson,
do with them?
all on big contracts. Anderson's on I think he's the highest paid player at the club. He's on a very big contract, and you would like to be able to sell him to get back some of the money you paid for him. Instead, he's gone on loan. That's not money that can really be reinvested in the squad. So, with the Arsenal game, I'd say, look at what Arsenal were bringing on. Look what Moyes was bringing on. Yeah, maybe people were saying he should have brought on Ben Johnson for, instead of Ryan Fredericks to try and shut down the left flank. But we are still talking about a 21-year-old, pretty inexperienced academy player compared to these sort of brilliant little Arsenal attackers that are coming on.
Yeah, Nicolas Pepe, 72 million, who came on. Yeah,
I know. Yeah, and obviously people will have their view on Pepe. He's not really, Arsenal fans don't really like him. But point I'm making is that maybe there's every chance that the other substitution that Moyes is making there may well not get them out of get them over the line. It's we're not talking about really established players who are coming into that. I just think that to me, there seems to be a resistance at times. I think that I get the impression that some people are waiting for it to fall apart. I think the first time I found myself in a similar kind of position of trying to defend Moyes, I think that, again, there was a bit of look at the squad that he took over in 2017, the squad, and look at the state of the squad after the January 2018 window, where, they sold loads of players, didn't really bring anybody in. Patrice Evra is coming in on a free transfer after the window. He's sort of walking around, but at the end with like one senior defender basically in Ogbonna getting them over the line. Antonio was injured the whole time, wasn't he? And they stay up. And I thought at that point, that final game, if you remember, against Everton, and okay, it was against Sam Allardyce's Everton, you could kind of see something coming together. Almost, especially equally that the win over Leicester, which kind of kept them up a week before, and instead there was just this resistance and the desire to go for the big name in Pellegrini, the big expensive manager, and he turned out to be just completely the wrong man. He wasted a lot of money. His picks were terrible. The players who he turned down, such as James Maddison, it really kind of beggars belief. Roberto was a complete disaster. And they lost 2 or 3 years because they kind of went chasing the fantasy crowd-pleasing manager instead of sticking with somebody who could build from there. And I just think that I personally worry that they'll get to a stage where will he be driven out and will they regret it? I hope that if it comes to that they're able to replace him with somebody better than Pellegrini, and it can be somebody who can take the club on. But you can't necessarily have too much confidence about that.
No, that's it.
Jacob, I'm interested to see where you stand in the whole when fans are back at West Ham, the West Ham of old will return debate. You hear it a lot in the media from a lot of pundits. I think Merson alluded to it in the studio on Sunday that the reason why West Ham are doing so well is because the stadium's empty and the fans aren't getting on their backs, and it is almost linked to what we were just saying about that there might be sections of the fan base that are kind of half waiting for it to all fall down. Do you agree with that stance? Personally, I think it's quite a lazy view, and it kind of is a little bit harsh on the work that David Moyes has done this season.
I think that if they'd have fans in the stadium on Sunday, and there's no real way to prove this. It's I could just be just coming up with a wild theory, is that they probably hold out, and that Arsenal, you know, if you think about what the atmosphere might have been like at 3-0, if you think of what the Arsenal away end probably would have been like at that stage, do you necessarily see Arsenal coming back? Do you see them composing themselves? I'm not so sure. I think they you know, they may well have just carried on getting more and more intense, and you probably see an empty away end at half time, and it's different. But you know, there's a bit of a weirdness to these games. You know, at times it can feel like a training game at certain stages. So you can kind of settle yourself and take a bit of a moment, and you know, you don't have a crowd on your back. The crowd obviously makes a difference. So perhaps in that environment, then yeah, it can make a difference. I think that if West Ham had you know, all those fans behind them, perhaps they would have got over the line. What I have heard is that there's a feeling within the squad that it's helped them, because it's helped them overall across the season not to have fans there, which isn't to say because the fans will get on their back. It's more because it's enabled them to play this style of football, which is they're not kind of being urged out of shape in a way. They're not being urged to go in. You know, when you've got a crowd there, you're kind of being pushed on to make a big tackle and stuff like that. In this setting, they're much more able to hold their shape and frustrate teams. I think that sort of, again, feeds back into a wider point about Moyes, which is that this team is comfortable playing in this kind of cautious way a lot of the time and kind of picking their moments when to attack. And then at the same time, you get people, I look at people saying, why doesn't he just go for it? Why don't, you know, and well, they generally don't really go for it. They play in quite a cautious way, and then they hit teams when they think that they're ready to do so. You know, I look at it and saying, well, why didn't you just go for it against Liverpool? And you kind of think, well, I think they had a plan for
last
that
week,
game.
Jacob. Lucky these two didn't stop. We should have just gone for it, Man United. You would have loved it.
I think that we have to be realistic about how good the teams are that they're playing. Yeah, they need to be realistic about how good these teams are. If Liverpool decide to turn up on the one day when they do, you're going to be in trouble. If Arsenal's very good players decide to stop being idiots, then they're going to be in trouble. You know, and again, against Manchester United, they specifically want you to come at them, and you know, look at what happened when West Ham chased the game. United almost scored 2 or 3 more, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, Jacob, that one won't have gone down well, but you can definitely come on again with stances like that, and it might not just be me shouting into the void as it usually is. But look, it's been absolutely brilliant, Jacob, having you on. We do appreciate you giving up some of your time. Just quickly before you go, then, how do you think it's going to play out for the rest of the season? These hopes of Europe. James said earlier on in the show that he doesn't feel games like that are going to define the season. I disagree again, thinking the stage we're at and the teams we're coming up against, it 100% does. These are exactly the games that will define whether this season just turns out to be a pretty good one and a nice improvement on last year and we finish 9th, or wow, this is absolutely something else and one we'll remember for a long time. How do you see it playing out?
What is it? 9 games to go. So I've been expecting them to fall away for a while. I think everybody has, and they keep just surprising everybody. So I think that you've got to give them, I think we've sort of got to stick by and think, yeah, that this team now has earned the right sort of, you know, for people to maybe expect a bit more from them in terms, not to doubt them. I think that top 4 will be tricky. You know, my main job now is covering Chelsea, and they're transformed. You know, if Chelsea still have Frank Lampard in charge, then I don't think they'd be 4th. I don't think they'd be anywhere near it. With a manager like Tuchel, then it's, you know, knowing what to do with world-class players and a world-class squad, which is far beyond that of West Ham. I'd be astonished if West Ham are capable of finishing above them. I do think that those drop points on Sunday will probably come back to haunt them. The other bit that maybe works with West Ham if they're going at it with Chelsea is that Chelsea are in the FA Cup semi-final. They've got Champions League quarter-final to play, you know, which they may well win. So they're going to have a backlog of games. At the same time, you know, they're a point ahead of Spurs, and which in itself is kind of crazy when you think that they have Harry Kane and Son and Bale, and you know, he's able to leave out players like Dele Alli, who would probably walk into West Ham's team. So
not ahead of Benrahma,
done
of course.
No, of course not. But they've done incredibly to get this far. With if you just look at the individuals in the squad, and I think the belief, how much the lack of pressure on them probably does mean now that they're able to maybe keep going. They've got past quite a few difficult games, haven't they? So I don't think top four, but I think that the Europa League, or this sort of weird Europa Conference League, is definitely possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jacob Steinberg from The Guardian there. We really appreciate you giving us so much of your time, Jacob. It's wonderful to hear your thoughts on all things West Ham, and hopefully we'll have you on again later on in the season to celebrate West Ham clinching Europe top four on the last day of the season with a Said Benrahma hat-trick. But
I would be very happy if that happens. I don't care if West Ham do well, and it's because of a player who I doubt.
Exactly, absolutely. Well, look, we really appreciate you giving us your time. Thanks a lot. Jacob Steinberg there, football journalist and West Ham supporter from The Guardian newspaper. Stay with us because it's the charity bets next. So, lads, Jacob Steinberg there. I mean, finally, one of the most well-respected, well-followed football journalists in the land comes on to the We Are West Ham podcast. He agrees with most of the I've been making the last few weeks. In as many words, calls you two muppets who know nothing about football or West Ham United. I mean, it's a cut and dry case, is it not, Tidewoods?
Yeah, he's achieved a lot in his career. He's a top bloke, but I sadly back myself in what I say and where I've played and what I know. So I'll keep to my words, and I think he's made some very valid points.
You've played.
Yeah, he's made some valid points. He's made some valid points. He knows what he's doing, and I do agree with him that the 30 million on Benrahma, the way he put it, it maybe wasn't the best signing, and perhaps he's opened my eyes to that in more than they were, but I still back him, and I still think we've got a good player on our hands, and I hope he comes true.
Yeah, absolutely. James, I know a sort of bit of fanboy from me there because, because Jacob was agreeing with a lot of stuff I said, but, Tom didn't seem quite as brave, did he, as he can do on Twitter at times, particularly last week when he suggested Jacob should perhaps watch the rugby because that might be more suited to him after he tweeted last week. He seemed to sort of retreat back into his shell somewhat, Tom Edwards, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I was half hoping that Jacob would go, sorry guys, didn't watch that. I was watching a rugby. Just to rub it in, but
Tom said to me on Twitter.
Tom, I was expecting more from you, mate, to be fair, but you did stand your ground. You did disagree with him and go, nah, you're wrong, Jacob. But yeah, no, I thought it was.
Did you call him a bottle job, James? You should say he bottled it, or
take my time, mate.
It's a little bit like West Ham on Sunday, Spursy.
Just wait for my phone, mate. Yeah. I need my phone. That's the problem.
Exactly. You wait, Jacob's going to get it both barrels with a load of capital letter tweets from Tom Edwards later on.
I'll create a burner account.
Well, look, that was absolutely brilliant. I mean, Jacob, and like I say, well respected journalist, supports West Ham as well. So great to hear what he had to say. Thanks, Jacob. Hopefully, we'll get him on again later in the season. Lads, Betway charity bets. I've put it at the top of this section on the show notes, as if the day wasn't bad enough. I mean, that's got to be the closest we've all been to winning some money on the Betway charity bets, and not a single one of them came in. I thought I had it in the bag. Tom was texting me just before half time going, will you shut up with all that win chat? My bet was West Ham to win, Lingard goal or assist, and a goal in each half. 3-0 up after 35 minutes. Jesse Lingard has already scored, and he got an assist for Bowen's one just to boot. Not that mattered. So all I needed was a goal in the second half and West Ham to win the game. Antonio pokes it in. That was 11-1, 550 quid for the Bobby Moore fund. That would have been Tom Edwards. Both teams to score. West Ham at half time, draw at full time, and over 8.5 corners. Both teams scored. Somehow West Ham, after being 3-1 up at half-time, it finished a draw. Tom Edwards has got it right. I didn't even see the corner count. Look on my phone, go and look, and his WhatsApp saying you missed out by 1 corner. We had 8 corners, half a corner we were away, or one more corner we needed. That was, I think, a 16-1 shot. Tom would have won 16 times 50 for Isla's fight. James Jones, West Ham to win, Lingard to score, Antonio to score, and over 8.5 corners. You were the furthest away from of all of us, and you still got 2 of your 4 selections in there. Antonio studs and 1 more corner kick would have done it for you too. Absolute head in hand stuff. Tom Edwards, you must have been mortified afterwards.
Yeah, gutted. Honestly, it was gutting. I thought if we were going to lose, basically the reason I did it is because if we're going to drop points, I want to be happy taking home some money, and to lose it on corners, gutting. But I'm going to get one. I'm going to get one for Isla very, very soon.
That was, mate, when you went for that, I thought that's a weird shout. I can't see that happening. And then especially when it was 3-1, I thought, oh, Tom's out of it then. Me and Jones are on, especially mine. West Ham to win. Lingard goal had already happened. I needed a goal in the second half and West Ham to hold on. I thought we only need 1 more. Happy days. Jonesy, just desperate stuff.
Yeah, I thought mine was nailed on because particularly when Antonio, but we all thought Antonio would score, but in fact, Souček nicked it off him. I thought I put in the WhatsApp, didn't I? I was like, I can't believe that Souček just stopped me from winning my bet. Because I just assumed the corners would come in. I think there would have been a couple of corners in the first half. I thought, yeah, that one will come in. But yeah, I was a little bit further away from you two. But Tom, yeah, absolutely gutted for you, mate, because I know how desperate you are for one. And to lose on essentially what is 0.5 of a corner. Yeah, nightmare. But yeah, you feel like getting closer though.
Soon enough.
Absolutely heartbreaking there. But look, good shouts from all of us, I think. If only we'd had it in us to hold on. That could have been a serious haul for the We Are West Ham podcast. And those charities that we are all playing for this season, thanks to the £50 each Betway are putting up for me and the lads to play with. There's a charity stake each week. So no bets this week, of course, because it is the international break. So the Betway charity bet section will be returning next week for our selections ahead of the Wolves game, but just absolutely a hair's breadth away this week from being a serious haul. But we keep going, we move. I've already raised a few £1,000 for the Bobby Moore Fund Isla's fight and the DT38 Dylan Tombides Foundation already this season. So great stuff on that front, and hopefully we can add to that before the campaign comes to an end. Stay with us because we've got the opposition view, which we're not doing this week because it is the international break. So we'll have a brief international roundup of what West Ham players are going where next. So the Betway charity bets, disappointing stuff, as we've said already, but positivity, we move, as James put it so well last week. You put it all behind us and you can only look to the future. You cannot change what happened yesterday, but you can change what happens tomorrow. So that is the mindset that we are adopting here on the We Are West Ham podcast. Lads, brilliant news, of course, that Jesse Lingard got picked for England. You'll be delighted to know that Said Benrahma has been picked for Algeria as well. So not to worry on that front. Vlad, so just to run through which of West Ham's players, 9 in total, have been called up by their respective countries for the March international break. Vladimir Coufal for Czech Republic, Lucas Fabianski for Poland, Jesse Lingard, Declan Rice for West Ham. Souček, of course, has gone with Coufal to the Czech Republic. Andrei Yarmolenko for Ukraine and Connor Coventry for the Republic of Ireland. Said Benrahma is involved in the Africa Cup of Nations, and Frederick Alves is on Denmark under 21 duty. James and Tom, both of you, we'll go James first. Wonderful news to see Lingard in the team, isn't it? And he even turned up in full West Ham gear.
Yeah, no, I was a little bit surprised actually that Lingard got the call. I don't think many of us were kind of considering him as a potential member of the squad. I know he's hit the ground running, and probably part of the reason why he agreed to the move to West Ham wasn't just to get some game time, but also put him in with the shout of going to the Euros this summer. And but even then, just kind of didn't consider him as a potential candidate so soon. But it's great news. And you're right, the fact he rocked up to training in his full West Ham kit. He's really bought into the club. You can see if you look at his social media on his Instagram, he's loving his time. And no wonder, given that we've allowed him the platform to get back in England squad after 2 years out. So good luck to him. Just hope he and the rest of the first team players are way over the next 2 months come back fully fit, because we're going to need every single squad member for that running.
Yeah, exactly. Tom, I think I saw this on your Twitter. You're absolutely fuming that Benrahma didn't get picked for England, weren't you?
Don't know how, mate. Don't know how. What's he been watching? What's Gareth been watching, mate? Jesus. I'll get to his passport.
Fancy picking Lingard and Foden for Benrahma.
Has he done that? I do want to say something on Lingard, though.
Mental. But look, yeah. Do, mate. Go.
I think, I'm with Jonesy. So surprised that he actually was given a crack, but it probably shows how highly rated he is by Southgate. I mean, he was one of his key men at 2018 World Cup. It really does show just how good a player he is if he can take him back after 7 games he's played for us. But also on him, I probably can't remember him having a better 7-game stretch in his career. It's probably the best football of his entire career. So thoroughly deserved. And yeah, as long as he comes back safe and sound.
I do love you, Tom. I reckon he may have had a better stretch.
He's the best goal scoring run of his career. Best goal scoring.
You say that, but you say that he's averaging a goal involvement per game, 5 goals and 2 assists in 7 games. I mean,
he scored 18 goals in 150 United games.
Not even Payet had numbers like that. So I suppose when you look at it like that, it's probably one of his best stretches. He's better than Payet. And he probably does, he deserves it. He does deserve it. Like when you actually look at the numbers and the stats he's delivered, of course he deserves the call. I don't know why we didn't even consider him.
No, I wasn't really surprised. I don't know who else you gonna pick? Like, what he couldn't have done anymore, could he? Other than played well at Fulham.
True. Yeah, true.
Tom, we've got a few others out on international duty. Sufal and Souček for the Czech Republic are actually playing Estonia, and then they head home to Prague to face Belgium. So a couple of difficult games. They've also got a game against Wales in Cardiff on the 30th of March. So some difficult games for them. We know they're starters for their country. Again, what Jonesy said then, that's all we've got to hope for, really, isn't it? It's nice to see them do well, particularly the West Ham guys at England. But we just got to be fingers crossed that everyone comes back fit. Even though I've just seen it now, you look exactly like Vladimir Kufel with your new barnet.
Don't do me like that. He's a joke, mate. This trim is no Sufal. It's more
just got to come back fit, haven't they?
Yeah, exactly. They just got to come back fit. The big one I'm worried about is them not picking up COVID, obviously, because what that will do for the rest of the season is tatters, and their health, obviously, their health first. But ultimately, if we have 1 or 2 of those go out for 2-3 weeks, mandatory 2 weeks or whatever it is, then that's a lot of trouble, really. So getting back safe and sound, and hopefully we'll see the back of this one and can just plow into the final stretch.
James, Andrei Yarmolenko with Ukraine. Is that a strange one? Is that one that I know the club are obliged to let these players go, and Yarmolenko loves playing for his country. They've got an away tie at Ukraine this is in Group D World Cup qualifiers, away tie at France in Paris on the 24th of March, and then they host Finland in Kiev before welcoming Kazakhstan. So, all right, the France game, a very difficult one indeed. You'd hope perhaps that the Ukraine manager, I don't know, holds him back for the games later on. He played for the under-23s, I think, the other day, and reports suggest that he looked a bit rusty. Rashane Thomas from The Athletic, who was at the game, tweeting afterwards that him and Masuaku, who were back in action, looked very short of sharpness. Are you concerned at all about Yarmolenko going, given that despite him being a right midfielder, he is our main backup striker?
I'm a little bit. I didn't realise he was fit. I thought he was still out. And then obviously he gets the call up. But Yeah, it is a bit of a worry given, his inability to remain fit for long periods, like our first choice striker at the moment. So yeah, it baffles me. But he's Ukraine, he's captain of Ukraine as well, isn't he? So it's not as if we could have gone like, Andre, do you mind just skipping this one, mate? Like, we kind of need you back here. Because he's probably going to start.
We've got a massive under-23 game on next Tuesday. We need you for it.
Andre, mate, like, just stick about Chablis for a few more weeks. Don't worry about the World Cup. Like, forget that. You've been there, done that. You've had a long career. Exactly. It's been great, but scrap that now.
It's in the winter. You don't want to go to Qatar, Andre. Honestly, mate, don't worry. It's overrated. No one's going to watch it anyway.
Exactly. But I suppose now he's captain, or as he's captain, you can't really say that, can you? You can just let him go and just make sure he stays fit and healthy and comes back and can inevitably fill in for Antonio during Antonio's next injury, whenever that might be.
I hope that's not projected negativity, James, because we'll have a couple of listeners getting into you on Twitter @ByJamesJones. For anyone who wants to have a go at James for that outrageous shout, just saying, well, look, West Ham have got their next game not until Monday, the 5th of April. Wolves away at Molineux, 8:15 kickoff. So we'll have the standard opposition view will be back next week, as will the Betway charity bets. But that is all. And fingers crossed, as the boys have said there, that the West Ham boys stay fit on international duty. But how wonderful it is to see a decent amount of the West Ham side playing for their country on the world stage, particularly Declan Rice and Jesse Lingard for England. So good luck to everyone. Stay with us because we've got Name That Game next. So it's that time of the show. Once again, Name That Game is back. James Jones's body language and demeanour always switches. In the little window I've got of him in the corner, my little Zoom window that's in the corner, the other side of my show notes on my screen. Every time Name That Game starts, James gets a bit twitchy. He either sits up in his chair, he looks a bit disgruntled. He's still bottom of the leaderboard at Name That Game. Now he's got to be Quizmaster. So me and Tom are the only ones with opportunities to win back some points this week. Tom Edwards sitting pretty at the top of the Name That Game leaderboard on 40 points. James Jones rock bottom on 34, and me just a point ahead on 35. So for any new listeners, each week the Quizmaster picks a West Ham match from history and collates 7 necessary pieces of information for that game. They are obscure fact about the game, the scoreline only, 1 opposition goal scorer, 1 West Ham goal scorer, the stadium in which the game took place, West Ham's opponent, and the season the game was played. If it's still a draw after that stage, it goes to a tie break, which is the exact year that the game was played. James, it's over to you this week. It's a point, of course, for me and Tom for each right answer or each piece of information we can give as you're revealing them. It's over to you. You're scratching your neck. You look a bit twitchy. You just want to get this over with so you've got a chance to win some points back. Or are you just worried that me and Tom will be out on our own after this week playing in a 2-man league?
No, I'm not worried at all. I mean, I think I've pulled one out of the bag this week, which might catch. I think Tom might have a chance, actually. I think Tom's knowledge is pretty good, but it might catch you off guard, Will. No disrespect, mate. But,
that sounds disrespectful.
But yeah, I mean, I'm ready to go. If you guys are all set,
ready,
I think we are. Okay, let's have it.
So the obscure fact is that West Ham's second highest appearance maker in the Premier League era made his debut in this game.
Yeah.
Behave. You haven't got it.
0-1.
It's correct. It is correct.
Yeah. Scoreline 1-0. Right. Opposition goal scorer. None.
That is incorrect.
Yeah.
Go on, Tom.
Eric Dyer.
It's 2-0.
Ah, Jesus.
So there isn't a West Ham goal scorer, so I can give you an alternative one.
Yeah, go on.
Both sides had a player sent off in this game. Who was West Ham's sending off?
I think I remember the game. I do remember the game. It was Rank. Oh, blimey. Who? Oh.
Ooh. I can't remember
that. Mark Noble.
Incorrect.
Go on, Thomas.
Oh, I don't know on that one. Andy Carroll?
No, incorrect. The
Go on,
correct
Jonesy.
answer was James Collins, 2 yellow cards.
Ah.
So in the stadium.
Upton Park.
Correct. 2-1. Opponent.
Spurs.
3-1. Season.
2014-15.
That is correct. 3-2.
Whoa. Blimey. Jesus, Tom, fair play, good knowledge. Who was the so it's 3-2 to Tom there, Jonesy. Yeah, another win for Tom. That puts him on 43, moves me up to 37. Jonesy now, the big gap between Tom and James Jones, 9 points in it. Jonesy, who was the second highest appearance maker?
Well, the reason I picked this one is because Aaron Cresswell's appearance against Arsenal on Sunday put him above Carlton Cole into second place, right, with 219 Premier League appearances. So yeah, he's still miles off. Mark Noble still got like 150 behind him, but I just thought, okay, well, I was going to do the game in which he scored his first goal for the club, which was 1-0 win over Newcastle at home. But I thought, no, that Tottenham game, first game of the season, with Eric Dyer one-on-one. No, I still don't know why Eric Dyer was through one-on-one with the keeper. But yeah, it kind of always just stands out. And yeah, he made his debut in that game, so I thought it was a fitting game to pick.
Tom, that is, James is right. That is proper good knowledge. That how do you know that? I just don't know who knows that stuff. Do you remember debuts or what? I don't really.
I do have a weird a memory for things like that. I don't know. And he used to, where I sat at Upton Park, I sat right by the dugouts, and I just remember whenever Fresh Face obviously played down that side first half, and I just remember being pretty impressed with him. But yeah, things like I don't know, mate. Yeah. Weird. I can't remember.
He did have a good debut.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I can't remember normal stuff, but I can remember when Aaron Cresswell made his debut and who against. So I'm not sure what I'd rather.
Yeah, no, I just think absolutely fair play. Josie, are you a bit like that? Because you could give me any player, and I never ever remember debuts really, other than Freddie Steers's against Blackburn.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm like that, a little bit like that with stats. Like I knew Cresswell was gonna go into second place this weekend, because I've got this weird thing about stats and West Ham stats stuff like that. I'm actually launching my own stats website, which I'll be plugging in this podcast when it's ready to launch. So yeah. But then little things like that, I probably wouldn't have got that myself had I not already known it. So yeah, well, fair play.
Fair play. Yeah, bravo, Tom. Well played there. Glad I managed to claw that one back in the end. So 3-2 to Tom on the night. That puts Tom on 43 points. Me in second on 37. James Jones rock bottom on 34. Thomas Edwards, you are the quizmaster next week. So there's almost no chance that I'll be catching up with you. But there is a chance that James could pull level with me. So I look forward to that one. And stay with us because we're nearly at the end of the show, and it's the West Ham women's section with Sandra Bobby, sports journalist from The Sun, next. So, name that game there. Another great win for Tom Edwards. Seems to be running away with it this season, streaking away at the top, 6 points clear at the top of the name that game leaderboard now. But someone like James Jones, who's at the opposite end, the wrong end of their leaderboard, is West Ham's women team. Not bottom of the WSL, excuse me. They were bottom of the WSL. It feels like we should be opening this section with in a negative fashion because they played Birmingham at home last Wednesday, 17th of March, 7:30 kickoff, went 1-0 down. You thought, here we go. Birmingham haven't been able to buy a win either. We had Catherine Batt on last week from the Daily Mail. It was very, very nervous about what she called a must-win game. Delighted to say that Sandra Brobby from The Sun, WSL expert and sports journalist, is joining us to chat all things West Ham women tonight. Sandra, West Ham women went 1-0 down against Birmingham, managed to fight back to 2-1, one of their best performances for ages on Wednesday, and then absolutely heartbreaking 94th minute. Just couldn't hold on from the win. I've been banging on about it like a broken record, but a cross from the right again, sails over everyone and knocked in at the back post for the equaliser to make it 2-2 after 94 minutes. It was absolutely heartbreaking. The girls definitely deserved more from the game after Katarina Svitkova's outstanding goal to make it 2-1. What did you make of it?
Yeah, I mean, it is gutting for West Ham. I mean, so close to getting the first win under Ollie Harder in the WSL, and then just for that, obviously Ruby Mace equaliser. That is very tough on them, because they've been battling. Their performances have been battling recently, and they did deserve to get the win. So, I mean, obviously they've got Man United coming up, but then you've got Reading. So who knows? You'll never know against Man United. You never know what could happen. They could put in a performance there. They could, shock Man United. You never know. So, but that performance is really gutting for them, because they've been working so hard, and I feel they have been improving in terms of what Ollie Harder's trying to do in terms of the pressing, but it's just very unfortunate for them with that last minute goal from Ruby Mace.
Honestly, I mean, they obviously briefly moved off of the bottom of the WSL, went above Bristol City, but Bristol managing to get an excellent point, 1-1 against Tottenham at the weekend, has put West Ham bottom again, albeit Bristol have played 2 games more. We'll keep stressing that they're just a point above West Ham now, but that win would have put West Ham 9th if they'd have managed to hold on against Birmingham. Honestly, Sandra, I can't describe it. I only just finished work and I've only managed to turn it on when it was 1-1. Katarina Svitkova scores an outstanding goal. We've been crying out for build-up play like that all season long. And I thought, oh, brilliant. That's exactly what the girls deserve. A comeback. This will give them a massive boost. And it looked like they were holding on. Birmingham had next to nothing they were offering going forward, and just out of nowhere, it was a good cross and a nice finish, to be fair, to make it 2-2. But I just couldn't believe it. I was so crestfallen. Do you think that, again, you mentioned Man United at the weekend, they're playing at Old Trafford as well, which will be quite the occasion. But I'll before we go into that a bit more, how do you think that, what do they take from that against Birmingham? Is it positives? Because look, girls, you can do it. You can put the ball in the back of the net, which has been a problem for such a long time. Or is it, we were so close, it's just not going to happen. It's going to be one of them seasons.
I think they can take some positives, definitely. The fact that, like you say, they scored twice. It was only a very last minute thing that, denied them the win. I think they can, take some positives from that, particularly. I mean, obviously, Man United will wait and see what happens with that, but particularly when they go up against Reading, they should be more than capable of getting the win or against Reading. So I think they can take some positives for that, and also take positives from the fact that it's so close at the moment at the bottom, and they've got the games in hand. So that's something that you can take positives from going forward for the other games this season.
Sandra, despite all those positives, as you already mentioned, a trip to Old Trafford coming up. Obviously, the magnitude of that game is a lot bigger now, and then they've got the pressures of then having to play at one of the biggest club stadium in the country. I suppose, firstly, sort of having a game at Old Trafford is obviously a great thing for the women's game, but can you see West Ham getting anything from that, given the heartbreaker against Birmingham? It
will be very tough. I mean, you're going to be facing a United side who are going to have the bit between their teeth because of their loss against Arsenal. I'd be surprised. I'd be surprised if West Ham do win, but then given how some of the games have gone this season, with Reading pulling off a win against United, and then, I know it's not United, but then Brighton, who were going through a bad patch of form, then stunning Chelsea when they had to, when they absolutely needed to get that win. You just never know what's going to happen. And I think just going back to that performance against Birmingham, the fact, you got 2 good goals on a score sheet, pressing well, were dominating. It was just rotten luck that they just came away from a point. I think that's just something that they can take when they go into this game against Casey Stoney's side on Saturday.
Sandra, there was the new TV deal was announced this week, and how much more pressure do you think that puts on the girls to retain the WSL status? Because obviously that's going to be not only huge for the women's game, but financially for the clubs, it'll be a massive fillet. So does that put extra pressure on the girls to go and get the job done now, particularly in the position they're in?
They may well see it as motivation, just that's something to give them the lift for the rest of the season, to battle to retain their spot in the top flight. It might just be the thing that, okay, we're really going to push on, again, to get as many points as we possibly can so that we can be in the division next term and to be part of all of that coverage coming up for the WSL. I mean West Ham are quite a popular side. I mean, it'd be a shame if they went down, but I'm sure it'll give them more kind of motivation, I'd say, more so than pressure, particularly for players like Gilly Flaherty, who is quite a heroic figure in WSL generally, aside from what she does with West Ham.
Sandra, what can you, for those of people listening who might not have, well, they would have definitely seen the news this week, but who might not know the sort of details of it, what can you tell us about that broadcast deal? It's my understanding it's a 3-season deal with Sky, around £7 million a year it's going to be worth to the clubs, which is going to be split equally, or so a portion of it split equally just based on WSL status, and then the remainder will be performance related as well, regarding to league position rather than which games are televised or which aren't. But there's some on Sky. What can you tell us? Where's it going to be? What's the take on it?
Well, BBC have pledged to show 22 of the games. Sky 40 odd, I believe, games are going. Both WSL and obviously Championship. It's the biggest deal in women for a top division. For the WSL in particular, it's seen as the biggest deal in women's football history. No other top league has had such a big TV deal as the WSL now has with Sky and the BBC. And I mean, it's just the general consensus is a fantastic move forward for all the clubs, just in terms of getting that mainstream coverage, both on terrestrial television as well as on Sky, of the Women's Super League. There have been some fans who flagged concerns about, early kickoff times, and obviously that affecting fans who, maybe will be travelling to stadiums when they're eventually allowed back. But the pluses are obviously all that coverage, all that analysis that you may well get on Sky, perhaps a soccer Saturday style, panel. WSL games. It's just a fantastic move forward for the league, for the teams, and for the women's game in general. And there's also the hope that some of that money will trickle down, to teams below the WSL and FA Women's Championship. And it's just raising the profile of the game and helping it to reach a much bigger audience than it already does. So it's a big win for the game and for
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge news, great news as well. I mean, obviously the games we've watched this season, the vast majority on the FA player, which can be a little bit clunky. It's not so, it doesn't invite itself or lend itself to something that you just flick over and think, oh, and get interest that way, is it? You kind of have to go out your way to watch these games. Same the other night with the Birmingham game, of course. But yeah, I think the money, do you think it's going to, one thing, I read an article this week talking about the players it's going to be able to attract as well. Obviously, you've seen West Ham have had an influx of foreign stars this season. That was the road they decided to go down. But with the status you mentioned, it's the biggest league deal, broadcast deal that women's game have got on the entire planet. Do you think with that there's going to be all of a sudden these big stars who perhaps might prefer to play their football in America at the moment or on the continent are going to be going, actually, no, I want to be part of that. I want to be playing in the WSL where I get my profile out there. It's good for them as far as sponsorship goes and all that sort of thing. And I want to sort of the first step to becoming, a major global star where perhaps they might just be known in their own countries at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, yesterday in a press conference, in the Chelsea press conference ahead of their game with Wolfsburg, that question came up. It was put to Magda Eriksson, their skipper, and she said that, you know, she can, I mean, already, you know, players in her country were talking about how they wanted to, you know, Norway, they were talking about how they wanted to come here anyway, but there is this sense that it's going to be a massive draw for some of the bigger name stars. So you may well see more players of the caliber of like an Abidal Kemper, you know, Sam Kerr, you know, big name players wanting to come and play here because of that, because of the profile that the WSL and also the Championship will have. So it probably will be more of a draw for some of the bigger stars wanting to come and play, and for some of the best players wanting to come and play in the top flight.
Yeah, that can only be a good thing for sure. For, as far as the game goes, and for the fans watching as well, I think. Sandra, there's been some concerns around, or raised around, you know, some of the pitches the girls have been playing on for the past few seasons. There's been several games this year postponed. I think it might have been Birmingham, correct me if I'm wrong, that have had a few problems, particularly with drainage at their pitches, and that's the sort of thing that a big, like, broadcasting behemoth like Sky, they're not going to stand for that sort of thing, is there? So is it my understanding it's right to say that there's going to be a lot of pressure on clubs to invest in their pitches primarily, to ensure that when this deal kicks in that they're ready, and there's going to be no hold-ups which you might associate with the WSL over the past few seasons?
Yeah, I mean, yesterday again that came up during a press conference, and Emma Hayes was talking about having a minimum standard that, you know, that grounds have to meet, and ensuring that, you know, there are the proper provisions in place to make sure that, you know, the pitches are playable. I mean, obviously you can't, you will have days where maybe games might be snowed off just because, you know, you can't control that. But there is going to be a move, I think, to make sure that pitches do meet minimum standards, so you're not getting the postponements due to, you know, pitches being waterlogged or sodden and what have you. So that's going to be part of the criteria. And one of the things that came up, one of the things that the FA brought up was having Deso pitches as well, and then obviously
Deso, what are Deso pitches?
High tech, kind of like I can't. I need to look more into it.
I think Deso is the UEFA standard turf. I think.
Right.
Yeah. Still grass though, yeah.
Yeah. So basically having Deso pitches used for some, you know, making sure those are in place. But yeah, there's going to be a move to make sure that you're going to avoid the kind of cancellation postponements that we've seen so far this season.
Will we expect perhaps that we'll see more women's games played in the men's stadiums?
Possibly. I mean, you may well see more kind of ground shares when that's possible, if it's logistically possible. I know that some clubs are quite content, like Chelsea are quite happy with Kingsmeadow, for example. I know that's a men's side. They use Kingstonian's grounds, and that works well for them. But there may well be opportunities where clubs might move into, you know, use their men's grounds as and when that's seen as logistically viable.
Oh, fair enough. Look, good news all round, I think. That 27th, Saturday, 27th of March, West Ham women travel to Manchester United to play at Old Trafford, 11:30 kickoff. It's a big game for the girls, and to pull a James Jones quote from earlier in the podcast, I don't think it's going to be this game that necessarily defines the girls' season, but it'll be really important for them to bounce back next time out away to Reading, which is the 3rd of April. Sandra, we really appreciate you joining us again. Absolutely great news about the broadcasting deal, and it kicks in from next season, am I right?
Yes, it does. Yeah. So it may well see more Emily Van Egmond's and other players of her caliber coming over, fingers crossed, to West Ham.
Yeah, and we'll be able to, all of you guys listening at home, perhaps those of you who don't already, it'll be far easier to watch the West Ham women next season than it has been this, which can only be a good thing. Well, Sandra, thank you very much for joining us. Sandra Brobby, sports journalist, WSL expert from The Sun newspaper, looking ahead to that game at Old Trafford, Saturday the 27th of March, 11:30 kickoff. Stay with us, because that's pretty much it for the show. We'll have some final thoughts from the lads, the Fantasy Premier League update next. So Sandra Brobby there from the Sun newspaper. Brilliant news, lads, about the WSL broadcast deal for next season. To be honest, yeah, like I say, it is a bit clunky, that FA player. It's not always brilliant, and it's sort of one camera, one or two cameras at the side of the pitch, but the level that the Sky broadcast and BBC, of course, are going to bring to that is going to be something else. And I think it's inevitable when you watch it. Honestly, that Birmingham game the other night, I was gutted afterwards, but the quality was there. It was a really entertaining game, and you're sort of really invested in it. And I think it can't be a bad thing. The viewing figures for the last Women's World Cup were through the roof. It can't be a bad thing that there's so much stuff on TV. You got 900 channels or whatever if you've got Sky. I definitely can't be a bad thing that's going to get in front of more people's eyes, James.
Yeah, no, I think it was only a matter of time as well, wasn't it? I mean, it's the women's game's already growing in popularity. It has done over the last few years, and I think you just got to look at some of the superstars of the sport that spent some time in the WSL this season, having come over on loan. A lot of the American superstars came over for short loan spells, or those that were playing over in the American leagues, and they're the big players, and they've already wanted to come to WSL. So it was only a matter of time before Sky Sports, capitalised on that and gave the sport, quite rightly, gave it the platform that I think it deserves. So yeah, looking forward to seeing more of it next season. And as Sandra said, with Soccer Saturday style panels and pre-match pundits and stuff like that, which you don't often see with the women's game yet.
No, absolutely, mate. No, it's just brilliant stuff. And just fingers crossed the girls are in the WSL next season and not the Championship. Massive few games. Starting, of course, at Old Trafford on the weekend. Well, look, lads, that's pretty much it for another week on the We Are West Ham podcast. We thought it was going to be a little bit shorter because it's international break. I don't know if it has been. Wonderful interview with Jacob Steinberg from The Guardian. I'm definitely going to see if he can come on to either replace one of you or just get him on every week, because a lot of the things he tweets and writes I tend to agree with. Great to hear from him. Great to hear from Sandra there, of course. Thrilling stuff in Name That Game. The huge new announcement that people can actually buy us a pint, which James Jones has struggled to do in the past. All good stuff, boys. Fantasy Premier League, Jonesy, that was pretty good as well. You were giving it large. I don't think there's any other phrase for it. Giving it large last week. I'm creeping up on you. I'm coming, etc., etc. Care to read out the scores? Because the Illuminati were at play this week, weren't they? In the Fantasy Premier League world, our little mini league between the three of us. I did win, in case you hadn't picked that up from my sarcastic introduction to the segment there. 66 points for me. James Jones got 55 points, and Tom Edwards, you'll never guess, got 44, 66, 55, 44. Absolutely mind-blowing stuff. Something is going on. But Jonesy, was you sort of care to temper your reaction somewhat? You tried to bait me in the WhatsApp chat saying, oh, you played your wild card, did you? Yes, I did. And I've moved 11 points even further clear of you. But you don't seem to have changed that annoying swagger that you get that makes me think you still think you're going to win.
Well, I mean, I'm far more confident now that I know you played your wild card. In a week
to good effect.
It was a blank game week, and your team now looks pretty weak for the remaining 9 fixtures. Going to cost a few points to fix that, I think. I mean, having to spend the rest of the season with Jamal Lascelles in your back four is worrying in fantasy. But yeah, you're 38 points clear of me. There was a time about maybe 5-6 weeks ago where it was 130 something, 120 something. So I'm still coming for you, mate. And Tom,
he's had it now, hasn't he?
No, I've got wild
50
card.
points behind.
I've got a wild card.
I've still got my wild card as well.
What are you waiting for?
Well, I changed it. I took a point to it last week. There's no point in that game week.
My point's only playing your wild card because you're setting your team up for one game week and not the rest of the season, aren't you? So
listen to it. Just another. So I'm on 1,709 points. James is on 1,653. More than 50 behind me. That is a lot, isn't it? And then Tom on 1,627, breathing down James's neck. Yeah, unless I've done my maths wrong.
Yeah, so you're 1,768.
Yeah.
I'm 1,730. So just 38 points.
Excuse me.
And,
Excuse me.
And Tom's on 1,680.
All right. Never mind. Sorry, Tom.
I'll take it.
So, well, look, both confident then, are you? So what are you saying then? Come on, let's have it now. James, just give me your final standings that you think between the three of us at the end of the season.
I'm not going to say I think I'll win. I think I stand a very, very good chance of finishing above you.
I didn't ask for good chances. I want 1, 2, and 3. That's what I want.
All right, 1, Tom.
Lol.
2, me. 3, Will.
Yeah, well, there you go. Absolutely ridiculous stuff.
That's only because I didn't want to say that I was going to win. So
yeah,
Tom's going to win.
Tom, are you still confident, or have you washed your hands of it this season?
No, I'm not washing my hands of it. I'm not going to bottle it quite yet. But me last, and then I just think Jones has that aura of Sir Alex chasing down and prey in the title race. I think it might just happen, mate.
I'm going to get an old Kevin Keegan. Oh, I'd love it if I beat him. I'd love it.
Yeah, he's still got to go to game week 31 and get something.
Absolutely. I cannot wait for Jamal Lascelles to be Newcastle's hero for their charge to safety for the rest of the season. But lads, what a show that was. Really enjoyed that one. Felt really good. Like I said, great to hear from Jacob. Brilliant to hear from Sandra. Great news on the WSL stuff. I'm still a little bit angry because I think any professional football team, when 3-0 up, should hold on for a win, regardless of who it's against. But hey, we move, don't we? We move. West Ham still doing all right. Do follow us on Twitter at @WeAre_West Ham. You can get us on Instagram as well, like Rob did this week. Sent us a really nice message. Thanks very much for that, Rob. If anyone else thinks nice things about us, it does really pick us up if we hear them. So do get involved with it. It's Twitter, Instagram, or our email, wearewesthampod@gmail.com. You want to share some nice thoughts with us, please do. Because it had a real positive impact on us this week. So thanks a lot, Tom. Like I said, you can buy us a pint if you want to at buymeacoffee.com/wearewestham if you fancy doing that and that's your thing. Leave us a review, 5 stars, and write some nice words on your chosen podcast platform. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. The link is in the description to this podcast below. You can watch back every interview we've done tonight, the whole episode, if you so wish. So you'll be able to do that within the next few days. James, brilliant show. Really enjoyed that one. Some final thoughts from you, please.
Yeah, really good show. Great to have Jacob on. Still disappointed that Tom bottled it, but I thought it was very, very insightful from Jacob on a number of things, including Benrahma. And you know, I thought his comments on the way that the players have felt in empty stadiums was quite interesting. And that they found it a lot easier. I mean, I still maintain that pundits using that, when the fans go back, it might all go a little bit wrong. I've always found it quite lazy. So it's interesting to hear what Jacob thought of that. But yeah, really, really good. It's just frustrating that we've got 2 weeks to sit on that 3-3 draw, Spursy performance, but we go again against Wolves in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Fingers crossed for some everyone to stay fit during the international break. Tom, I mean, James has called you out for being a bottle job there. You definitely retreated back into your shell when Jacob come on face to face. Classic internet troll behaviour from you after giving him the full caps lock treatment on social media last week. What have you got to say for yourself at the end of a brilliant show?
Yes, I'll probably look back on it as one I could have had back maybe and had another crack at him, gone for him limb from limb. No, I'm joking, but no, I thought I stood my ground to a degree on Benrahma. I'm not overly passionate on it. It's not I love him and I've got a shirt and I do stick up for him. And I'd happily would have it out with him, but he made some valid points and he knows his stuff as well. And I think he wasn't dismissing either aspect. He was just putting his foot forward, and yeah, it's really good to pick a brain of someone who's been able to go and see it firsthand, and obviously has had a long career in following West Ham and following Premier League football. So yeah, as always, quality to get him on and quality to chew the fat after such a frustrating weekend. It doesn't feel quite as bad after doing a show. So yeah, onwards and upwards, mate.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. But that is it for this week. West Ham's European hopes still hanging in the balance, and despite what James Jones will tell you, these next few weeks definitely will define our season. Could it be Europe, or could it be ninth and we all just smile and go, oh yeah, at least we've improved? Well, I tell you what, I will not be in the mood for James Jones's pragmatism if that ends up happening this season. Get me to Rome, get me to Munich, get me to Prague, get me to Madrid next season, because West Ham should be going on a European tour. Come on, everyone, let's have it. Thanks, as always, for listening, guys. We do appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Stay with us, keep the faith, up the hammers, and we'll see you next week.